The king has cancer, but enough about my Hunter x Hunter rewatch. In other news, the king has cancer. Hope the people who got that appreciate it. King Charles, wait, what kind of cancer? Prostate cancer, classic. You know, jork in it helps with this. Reduces the likelihood that you get prostate cancer. Prostate cancer, he'll be okay. Oh, he'll be okay. He's got the best healthcare in the world. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not prostate cancer. During the king's recent hospital procedure for benign prostate enlargement. Okay, so he was getting his prostate milked, and they found this as a separate issue. Okay. My apologies. So they rushed to confirm that King Charles does in fact joik it enough to not have prostate cancer. I hope it's, what's the worst cancer? Brain cancer. I hope it's that. The king underwent a corrective procedure for an enlarged prostate. This literally sounds like a hackneyed yowie. Oh, doctor, my prostate's too big. Someone needs to crush it back into the appropriate. Someone needs to squeeze it back down into you know, the appropriate size. Literally, yeah, like, hey, my balls are too big. I've seen that one before, you know, please help. Yeah, hope he dies. Don't care. Him. You know, there was a kind of like historical dignity to the queen. I didn't like her. I don't like the monarchy at all. But at the very least, like, the queen being 5 million years old, I mean, she was around during World War II. If anything, she was like a living relic. But none of that applies to the king, you know? None of it does. No, there's a huge difference between the monarchy in the UK being this, like, ancient traditional symbol of a human older than time itself just sitting on a throne, but this guy, he's just a old guy. He's just a guy. Yeah, with the queen being as old as she was, you could delude yourself into believing that the monarchy was a holdover, you know, like a retirement position, something that's kept around only because somebody's been in that position for so long, and once that person dies or retires, the position will also die or retire with them, you know. That was the impression that the queen gave. But this is just a guy. He's just a guy. He's just a guy. He's a birthday boy. He's had too many birthdays. Also with Diana, he's even more hateable. Oh, he's a very hateable man, to be sure. You know how I've talked before about England being a dying or perhaps even dead country? This is a very unscientific measurement, so you'll have to forgive me for waffling a bit. But I feel like the potential hope for the future of a country, you know, it's a lot of it comes down to how much that country has a can-do spirit. And I mean this. I really mean this, you know? Because, like, a huge part of a country's ability to grow and improve is both the public and the politicians' interest in changing and moving forward. This is one of the reasons why China, for all of its faults, for all of the corruption and the fascism and the what have you, you know, China has had an extremely can-do spirit for a while. And a large part of that is because, you know, there's still a living generation that dealt with the famine back in the 1970s. So there is like a bottom floor. People really, really want improvement because they weren't born into a world of comfort, right? So the desire to like build new highways, build new cities, build new trains, build new hospitals, like that has been present there, you know? And in the United States, we don't really have any can-do spirit at all. Like, right now, the political divide in terms of progress is like you have the Democrats, you know, chaired by Biden, who want to open up new fracking permits, and then you have the Republicans who deny the existence of climate change. Nobody wants a bold new future. There's no bold new future in America. There's some energy for a future, I guess, with like Bernie-crat types, but for the most part, I think this country has been relatively comfortable in its britches since the 1990s, and you know why that is? It's because we won the Cold War. We got complacent. Back when we had a big global enemy, back when the Soviets existed to keep us on our toes, you know, we were, there was some kind of, there was a push forward. There was something moving us forward. Maybe not always in the right direction, but at the very least, there was energy. We had energy. But, you know, Cold War ends, Fukuyama, end of history. Nobody wants to do or change anything. You know, this is the apex of society. Nothing grows or improves from here. But here's the thing, okay? The British had that change, that shift in mindset, like earlier, you know? It happened to the British earlier. Think about it. They were at the height of their colonial empire. They functionally, at least as close as you can, in the context of what they were and how much land they had, ruled the world. And it's been a slow decline since World War II. But there's never really been a bright, like, vision of what the country was going to be, besides that. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Labour Party's put an effort forward, but I feel like for the most part, this is like capital L liberalism, right? Not liberal in the sense of, like, freedom and democracy, but liberal in the sense of, like, institutional complacency. And what is more British than institutional complacency, right? Isn't that a whole thing with them? Stiff upper lip, right? Like an obsession with institutions, rules, civility, decorum. I feel like the British don't have any can-do spirit. I don't think like it's a dead country. It's dead in spirit, you know. And fittingly, it has a king, right? Because what would better indicate a country being dead in spirit? To quote Pink Floyd, that's the English way. Yeah. Is America going to become like that in the future? Well, if we do fall to fascism, the crumbling social order will, if nothing else, incentivize people to start giving a shit. Vosh, you doing the unironic weak men create hard times? Nope, not even remotely. Just because two things sound a little bit similar to you doesn't mean that they're the same thing. What I'm talking about is how liberal institutionalism, the belief in the end of history, and an unwillingness to advance a national interest beyond a point of, like, nostalgia can be really, really destructive. If you even in a country as regressive as China, like, their internal messaging has been extremely visionary. Seriously, you can go take a look at the propaganda they put out internally, but the Chinese government and the Chinese people have both demonstrated a great appetite for this bold vision of moving forward. How often do you see stuff like that in America? Seriously, like, think about it, right? We tried to do high-speed rail in California, and then it stalled for a decade because one billionaire proposed a non-existent alternative, the Hyperloop, that never ended up happening, obviously. Like, we haven't even, like, the high-speed rail in California hasn't even really started. It's already cost billions. Like, this country doesn't have much of an appetite for big projects. Everything is very procedural. Everything is very minimal. Everything is very reformist, if at all, right? Like, if there is any change, it's very, very, very incremental. Even more so in England, I think, to a large extent. Whatever energy we have for great social upheaval, they have even less for it. What do you mean the past few years have been really solid with growing labor and civic infrastructure against the right? Yes, there's been some positive trend here in America, but remember, I'm mostly talking about England. Has there been in England? Has England had a past few years of growing labor and civic infrastructure? I ask you, knowing the answer. Over here in America, that's why I said it's not as bad over here in America as it is over there in the UK. It's a lot worse over there. That there is like a spark in America, right? There is something here. There's still a bit of a fire, there's embers burning in the coals. As for the UK, I don't even know. I can take anti-British sentiment from you. Get the goddamn Earl Grey tea out of your ears, you stupid piece of shit. This isn't anti-English sentiment. This isn't water bottle, like this. That's not what I'm doing, okay? I'm legitimately talking, like, I'm trying to make a point, okay? Listen, Jesus. Like, I'm being sincere. Really, to the people in my community who are watching right now, who are British, I'm sorry, can you reaffirm what I'm saying? How much bold, visionary ideology is there in your country? How much of an appetite is there in your constituency for big changes, big movement forward? Because every impression that I get from the media and from the news coming from Britain is that they are incredibly lodged in nostalgia and institutional complacency. That there is very little, like, they are so lodged in institutional complacency that they had a visionary leader, potentially Corbyn, and the party seppuku'd itself to keep him from achieving power, right? Like, they did a Bernie Sanders times 1,000, At least with Bernie Sanders, they just kind of screwed him over a little bit with media coverage and with, like, the internal DNC running against Hillary Clinton. But with Corbyn, they literally just, like, sabotaged the party itself. It's insane. Brexit is another good example, by the way. England could have led the EU. I know that sounds silly because Germany has been so obviously the leader, but that's largely because arrogant British fuckheads they haven't considered themselves European. Guys, I don't know if you know this, British people don't think of themselves as European. It's like that Slavoj Žižek bit, except real. It's a real bit where they don't They don't think of themselves as part of Europe. They think of themselves as the British Empire, but modern, you know? That, like, seriously, if you take a look at the way the British government operates, from the way it looks to the way it talks to the way their media refers to Britain and British people broadly, they just act like the shadow of the empire they were. They don't talk about themselves like a part of the broader European community. It's like they're so rooted in nostalgia. Their nostalgia goes back like almost a century now. They remember themselves. I'm telling you guys, America remembers itself. To an extent, at least, because Donald Trump has upended this a lot. America's image of itself is rooted in the mid-90s, at the end of the Cold War. Fukuyama, end of history, suburban blight, malls, blah, blah, blah. That's shifting right now. But that's like the root. That's the nostalgia that's being corrected. I'm pretty sure that England, specifically, because I'm not trying to root Scotland into here, but, whatever, England, Wales, they think of themselves all the way back to the 40s. I'm pretty sure that if you take a look at where the nostalgia is rooted, it goes all the way back to Churchill. That's where they go back to, because that was the last time that they were relevant. That was the last time that that Britain had a real seat in the world stage. And that's so long ago. What's your opinion on Welsh independence? I don't have much of one. I don't know much about Wales, I'm afraid. So you're saying it's all Thatcher's fault? Yes, it's all Thatcher's fault. Scotland has more energy than their UK contemporaries, which is why I'm supportive of Scottish independence. Scottish independence isn't just a bunch of, like, I don't know, nationalist dullards looking to have their own slice of the pie. It seems like the Scottish people actually do have a vision for a better world, and they're being held back by the rest of the UK. True, Brycey Fergo, that is true. But I think the British people are lacking enough in, like, sort of self-awareness and class consciousness to actually act on that the way they vote, you know? Maybe people are desperate for change, but quiet desperation is the British character, right? Quiet desperation, but staying quiet about it is, like, archetypically British. So it's really a matter of what gets done. Vosh, the UK was still a massive power throughout the Cold War. What are you on about? I know that you take joy in being, like, needlessly contrarian, but if you don't understand the statement, the UK was at the height of its national power and relevance at the end of the World War II, and since then it's been downhill, then you just don't know anything about British history. It really wasn't. The United States ran NATO. Like, people say today that the US runs NATO, because we do, but back then we ran it like 100 times over. Like, every shot was ours to call. When the UK lost India, that was it. The UK has never had an identity outside of being a colonial power. America had a robust identity all throughout the Cold War and onward, and we also enjoy, being the superpower, right? But the UK has never had, like, a visionary... Okay, think of it this way, all right? Let's talk about national identity. We talk a lot about America. What about Germany? We make Nazi jokes about Germany, sure, and don't get me wrong, still packed full of Nazis. But the identity that Germany has had has shifted significantly since World War II, hasn't it? Right? The way Germany has presented itself, thought of itself, passed laws. Now it's like this, business-like... leader of the EU, industrious, but, still kind of liberal and progressive. Like, the attitude of the nation has shifted significantly since World War II. Obviously, it had to. We made it. We'll do it again. That's a good thing. But it goes to show how much things can change, right? Japan as well. Japan came to prominence in the way we think of it today back in the 1980s, back with its tech boom and Sony and, exporting Japanese culture and anime and what have you. I ask you again, what has the UK done in the past 80 years? King Charles has cancer! Holy shit! Okay, what has the UK done in the past 80 years to meaningfully redefine its identity? Not just like, oh, some things happened in it. Of course things happened in it. There's plenty of people in the UK. They've produced art. The Beatles happened. Like, I know that. But the nation itself, I would agree that Brexit. Yeah, I would agree with, yeah, I would say Brexit. I would say Brexit was the big, like, zeitgeist of the UK following World War II, and it was a negative one. It was one rooted primarily in xenophobia and nostalgia. Before colonialism, the English elites thought of themselves as exiled French. The rare English Tsarist Russia synthesis. I see. It's actually so over. Oh, dude, it's so over. When Poland overtakes the UK, by 2030, its economy will be bigger than Britain's. Why are we being left behind? It's so over. That's brutal. This is like, I would, man, woo, difficult to even imagine, honestly. The UK has an aging population problem. The UK has several issues. As a fellow Pole, you should know how industrious we Poles are. Do you know why Poland wants to grow? It's because of Soviet occupation. National trauma incentivizes countries to grow. You know, when generations of people remember the horrors of war or famine or whatever else, genocide, it has a tendency to light a fire under their ass. This has happened pretty reliably in most countries that had a redevelopment period after the war. As long as they're given the space and the time to regrow and aren't just kept in a state of like permanent occupation or warfare, they usually have the opportunity to bounce back really hard. And that's because people are on their grind after stuff like that happens. And you know what? Britain was in the war. Britain got the shit bombed out of it. London, which is the only city in all of England, it got leveled. Large portions of it did. But it didn't seem to... I mean, there was a big, like, reconstruction boom, but it was in the wrong direction because they started taking lessons from our interstate highway program and our suburbanization, and they started doing, like, interurban highways all throughout England. They went the wrong direction. They started doing, like, car infrastructure, which is one of the reasons why, with the exceptions of some areas, England is way more America-feeling in terms of its civic infrastructure than a lot of other European nations. Keep in mind, there are cities in the UK that are well over 1,000 years old. I mean, we're talking as much history as you would get from the Parisian, sort of outskirts, the country. So what, like any Italy, go any country in Europe, you know? But a lot of it like got bombed, of course, by the Luftwaffe, and rather than rebuild in a way that sort of reflected British character and cultural values, they did the car infrastructure. It's still nowhere bad as the US, though. No. In terms of car infrastructure, it's nowhere near as bad as the US. Of course. So what Vosh is saying is we need to bomb England. I think that's the point that I'm getting at. I guess what I'm saying is that King Charles has cancer because the UK has cancer, is what I'm saying. People often mistake what I am saying as, like, petty jabs at England. And to be fair, I do make those, but, like, I'm not petty enough to fold them into, like, a 30-minute ramble on the subject. I do mean what I'm saying. I think that visionary spirit and a desire to change, a willingness to change, is, you know, being a powerful nation is a lot like a Steven Universe song, okay? It's about self-acceptance and a willingness to change for the better. Really, though, like, it sounds kind of paltry, but the people need to have an appetite for good things. And I don't know. People need to have hope in a better future. That's what they need. People need to believe that the system that we live in now is not the best of all possible systems. Complacency is the enemy of progress. And unfortunately, in a world that is constantly growing and changing and shifting and evolving, no progress might as well be regress. And that's exactly what the UK has experienced in terms of its life expectancy, in terms of its quality of living. Once again, we've taken a look at, like, adjusted income per capita and found that if you take out London, all of England has the same average wealth as the state of Mississippi. Again, that's not a joke. If you take out London, that one city, the capital, and look at the rest of the entire nation, their average wealth and development is comparable to that of Mississippi, the worst state in the Union. Link for the Mississippi thing. It's extraordinary. The blue line is the national average. The red line is the national average if the richest region was removed. Kind of an ambiguous marker there, but you can see right here, over in the United States, you have GDP per capita. There's Seattle. Hey, San Francisco, Boston, New York City, blah, blah. If you took out the wealthiest region from the United States, as you can see, the line goes down a little bit on the average, but not too bad. Mississippi is all the way down here, by the way, at the very bottom of the chart. See, literally right here at the dashed red line, which is the exact point over here that the UK would be at with the absence of London. You're underestimating how much the Conservatives have stripped English people's hope. No, I'm not. That's a part of it. The government doesn't care about the North, or apparently anything other than London. The US has multiple wealthy regions. Yes, it does. But again, we're looking at the comparison between the UK without London versus Mississippi. Ridiculous. Labor calling itself the party of business. Oh, thanks, Keir Starmer. Looking great. By the way, this isn't all because of the Tories. Labor voters allowed this to happen. Like, let's not pretend here, okay? only a minority of Labour voters are like Corbynites. A significant portion of Labour voters were fully susceptible to and complacent with this shift in the party. Graph of food bank use in the UK, it's insane. Jesus. Yeah, this was the Tories specifically. I've talked about like broader decline for the UK, but this specifically is a Tory special right here. Labour also dropped the House of Lords reform goals. Nice. Yeah, no hope. This is what I mean, you know? Like, Biden, monstrous as he's being right now, at least he's like kind of pro-union, and there are people in the Democrats who are loud about progressivism. Like the current left-wing flank in the UK, the Labour Party, is talking about how women can't have penises or whatever, and walking back on every single thing they pledge to care about. The Labour Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is no longer going to reinstate a cap on banker bonuses the Tories abolished. Nice. Cool. I guess this is what you have to do when you know that your country is almost exclusively propped up by London being a trade powerhouse, and that's it. Vosh, the Labour voter base doesn't choose who's in charge of the party. We don't have primaries. I know how the system works. Do you think there's no relationship between the attitude of Labour voters and what happens in the Labour Party? You choose your local constituents. Those elections matter. Can we please look at something more interesting, please? Yeah, sure. Here, you can look at paint dry. So what you're saying is we should inflict trauma on developing countries? Well, developing countries have the trauma of not being developed, you know? Developing countries do have that fire under their ass. It's mostly a matter of the resources they need. I think the best thing that could happen right now to the UK, and I'm not joking, even to England itself, would be for Scotland to leave. I think that the UK needs I should say England specifically, because they're the source of this rot. I think that England needs a wake-up call. I think it needs a kick in the ass. The Brexit was on England's own terms. Brexit was like, oh, we're better than those Europeans. We don't want brown people here. We don't want Pakistani people here. I think somebody needs to leave them, right? Irish reunification would be a big dub, though I doubt that's going to happen, even despite the Star Trek meme. But Scotland leaving would be the big one, especially since they recently did that unprecedented, like, overruling on the Scottish Parliament law concerning trans women in prisons or whatever. Or no, the trans ID, that was it, trans ID. Why hasn't Scotland left? It's just tough to, you know, it's a big deal. Secession is a very, very big deal. Scotland isn't self-sufficient. The English tax base subsidizes Scotland's government. They'll survive. And yeah, they have London. London is the source of all wealth in the UK, so it makes sense. I vaguely remember English Parliament blocking a Scottish independence referendum after Brexit. The interest will only grow as things get worse. We'll see. Yeah, I don't think Irish reunification is likely to happen anytime soon. I think that the Scottish independence movement has some real weight to it, but it's not like a tomorrow thing, you know. Given enough time, we'll see. Edinburgh is the second wealthiest region in the UK. Yeah, hold on. Yeah, judging by this, it actually seems like Scotland would be better off. If you take a look at, you know, I mean, obviously you have London over here with its ultra wealthy districts, but in terms of like averages, I don't know. There are a lot of very poor regions in England. This is complicated. I don't know enough on the subject to really GDP per capita in 2016. God damn, this is Edinburgh, right? I assume it is. What else could it be? London, some London districts in Edinburgh are the No, it's not? Oh, people were talking about it like it was super wealthy, and this is clearly a wealthy region. Is Edinburgh this little dot right here? Edinburgh, sorry, it's not the Thames, like a sensible person, my apologies, it's the Thames, my apologies. Oh, and it's not Shire, it's Sheer, or perhaps Sure, depending on where you are, north or south. Oh, my apologies, I'm sorry, you know, Celtic Nordic influence 1 billion years ago and how you pronounce everything. Greenwich, Edinburgh, it's Stir, not Sheer. It's not Sheer, it's Shire. Worcestershire. The Thames. The Thames. The Thames. The Thames. The Thames. So anyway, the king has cancer, and so does the country.